Deputy Cairns.
So yeah, first of all, like Deputy Smith, you'll have to excuse my inability to speak Oscail again. Minister, I welcome today's sitting, which recognises the unique challenges faced by the Gaeltachts and the islands. And I suppose, first of all, perhaps, like this, it may have been mentioned, my inability to understand Irish is the same, but perhaps the committee could reconsider another session with representatives from the island community to enable a fuller discussion. I think there's been witnesses for other COVID committees present during it, and that would be great. My first question concerns what we can learn from the current situation. The pandemic has been a time to reflect and seek improvement on how the state and society operate. As part of this process, we should commend island communities. There's loads in my home constituency: Bere Island, Sherkin, Heir, Cape Clear and Long Island. We've seen them really pull together and help each other. This includes service providers like our local supermarkets, ferries and healthcare services. However, the inherent vulnerabilities of island living have also been highlighted throughout the pandemic. So, Minister, I'm wondering, is there an action plan? There is an action plan due later this year, and what processes have you put in place to work with island communities in learning from the emergency to help develop these plans and improve them? That's my first question.
Thank you, Deputy. And yes, I know you have a huge a huge interest in islands, and I did meet in my role as Minister for the Islands in I think it was in Bere at a recent event last summer. I think it was, when you were newly elected, and congratulations on your elevation. I suppose you could argue we're always learning from situations that arise, and we launched an island policy, Tánaiste the Simon Coveney and myself and a number on Sherkin Island. I can't remember when, November, I'm told. November it was last year. And that obviously we put out a sort of position paper or a discussion paper, if you like. And they started, the officials in the department started a public consultation information session, and they went through a number of consulted about a number of different islands in the months of January and February up till the 7th of February. And obviously things were halted thereafter, and obviously, as you know yourself, sometimes they're halted with weather conditions as well, but they were out to a number of islands, including Cape Clear, I think, on the 7th of February, Inishadishkul on the 7th of February also, Inishmore on the 29th of January, and Tillon Moors, Bere Island, on the 17th of January as well, Ilan Fuidja on the 10th of January, Aaron Moore on the 13th of February, Inishfada on the 7th of February, Inishman on the 30th of January, Inishir on the 22nd of January, Inishbui on the 10th of January, and Inisharkon on the 9th of January. So there is a process, there has been a process, has commenced and will be concluded hopefully once the restrictions are lifted and travel will be resumed to allow public gatherings on islands. So it's a very important part of the process, and you rightly said the aim is to publish an action plan as quickly as we can. Yeah. Thank you, Minister. And I suppose everyone appreciates that island communities and the Gaeltachts face additional complications in recovering from the pandemic. Greater attention needs to be given to how our current and future responses to COVID and the recovery can be adapted to support the islands. Not only do we need phased approaches, you know, if the public health advice for the mainland is a phased approach and it's not for the islands, I think people in island communities have concerns about that, but we need regional measures that acknowledge the different conditions on islands and also in rural Ireland compared to urban areas. For example, if your business just can't open on an island simply because it's on an island, we probably need to look at targeted supports for those businesses, including maybe special VAT rates, a monetary fund for business, and more flexible grants than existing ones. So I'm wondering, can you provide clarity on how it's envisaged that the islands will be reopened and supported in the current challenging environment? My last question, a written response will be fine due to time constraints, but this year whole groups of secondary college students won't benefit from the immersive experience of the Gaeltachts, for example, like we have on Cape Clear in West Cork, but I'm a perfect example of somebody who spent 14 years learning Irish every day in school, and there's loads of other people in the same boat. So really,
you know, the best and most effective way to learn Irish is in these immersive communities in Gaeltachts. So they're absolutely essential. I think we can all acknowledge how important they are when everything's taken into consideration, and how lovely it is to hear everybody speaking in Irish in here today, indeed how much I envy it. So I'm wondering, is there plans for alternative facilities such as online platforms or shorter stays in Gaeltachts during the spring, if health advice would allow for it to keep them going? And can you ensure maybe like specific schemes to make sure that Irish colleges can stay going after this pandemic? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. First of all, in relation to the islands, and I touched on it earlier, but NEFIT obviously gave the original advice in relation to Phase 5, and when they removed Phase 5, they, I suppose, didn't determine when there'll be full reopening of the islands, but they are doing that now. I understand they're meeting today and they will be providing advice. So there'll be a sort of a reconfiguration of phases 3, 4 and 5, and that advice you know, updated roadmap will be published. In terms of a phased reopening, that will be my view, but obviously we have to wait for NEFIT's view based on the health risk and the fact that the R rate and the transmission rate is much lowered. But certainly there is a view from many islanders that have contacted me directly, as I stated, that they wish to remain closed, and they wish that there wouldn't be tourism on their islands this year. And obviously, as others have said, there is that balance between then businesses that need to make money, and if there were to be restrictions, then I could see that they would have a valid case in terms of a package. And I know that the task force on tourism, I would imagine that would be something that they would be looking at, but I could see that there would be a valid case. But as I said, the advice has to come from NEFIT and be agreed at Cabinet. But there is certainly a view from, I won't say all, but a majority of businesses that they wish to reopen, and more importantly that they wish to get a decision quickly, and I agree with them on that. I wish that we could get there as well, and I hope that NEFIT can come with the advice and that we can make an announcement on that. In relation to learning Irish and the immersion, you're very right, and the Gaeltachts hour in the Gaeltachts were hugely important, and it is a pity that they're not available this year, as well as obviously the crack and the spree that youngsters get out of that, and the friendships and whatever else. You know, it is important in terms of actually appreciating that many people do actually speak Irish on a daily basis, and not just in an education setting. So it is good to see that as part of a community. And the supports that we put in place for the Gaeltachts hour and the Manachi this year will ensure that there will be courses next year, assuming there's no pandemic, but we'll all hope that won't happen, that there will be courses next year, that the Gaeltachts hour will be viable, that the Manachi will be available, to cater for students, and that the students can go there. In terms of, I suppose, the next stages, there are, you know, very good schemes, although limited in numbers for a lot of reasons, in terms of the Aran Islands, whereby 10 pupils come from different parts of the country to spend a period of time a year on the island in terms of attending the school. So that is full immersion, and the concern there is, of course, that you have an impact on the actual spoken language on the island itself, but that doesn't seem to happen based on the results and leaving certs, that there's no negative impact on the islanders' education, and it obviously hugely improves those people who are suddenly immersed into it, whether it be from Dublin or Cork or wherever they come from. Cunner and the Gaeilge and other groups and Coláiste, they are looking at online courses as well, and I'm sure that those will be announced in due course as well. You know, when they are, we can send you a note, or we can send deputies a note that they may have an interest in that. But as I said, everything we've done here has been to try and ensure that these very important resources are available once the pandemic is over, and that the Bible company, Deputy Kearns,
Deputy Breed-Smith, 5 minutes.
Ceistin tú freagar dóibh.